Yeah, good afternoon, or whatever it is for you. Um, Shortly, we'll be doing much the same as we did yesterday, I think. We'll do some more chanting and call and response and go into a sit. And I'll leave a little bit of time at the end to see if there's anything any of you want to say. And that'll be it. Um, I mean, one way of one way of thinking about these bodhisattvas and these figures, these archetypal figures that we employ through the use of mantra, and sometimes we also might employ them through visualization and so on. One way of understanding this, they kind of represent a possible configuration of your own. I'll use the word psyche or heart, mind, I don't know, yeah, possible configuration, yeah. Like they sort of give us something that our image that our own psyche might be able to sort of constellate around, you know. And this doesn't, in my mind anyway, I'm not sure if I can really explain this in a satisfactory way, but I don't I don't think I'm too out of the ballpark actually these days, and it seems to me more and more likely that consciousness is something that we participate in, you know, like a bit like life. Yeah, what is life, isn't it? Psyche is a kind of subtle aspect of life, isn't it? And though we've though we've kind of contracted in the modern age. Once we gave that sort of animistic belief, we kind of contracted psyche to just sort of existing in the individual. Of course, if you're of a religious persuasion, you might not have that idea. You might sort of see that there's some kind of connection with a kind of superpower or a god. I don't know how satisfactory that is either, but more naturally, um, and I think we all have this as children, psyche sort of exists in everything, you know. That's our sort of natural response, particularly to the living world. Not, but psyche might even exist within objects, you know. But anyway, we don't have to worry about that. But we can stick to the sort of living world. This would have been the normal way up until fairly recently. What am I saying? You know, maybe 2,500 years ago, the Greeks started actually again moving away from this idea at some point. But the pre-Socratic Greeks we had this idea in certainly many cultures, many so we call them indigenous cultures, don't really say to them. Um, Still have this idea, still have this feeling for the world that psyche, everything has psyche. Everything has a sort of material existence, but it has a more subtle, energetic existence, or spiritual, soul existence, or whatever words you want to use, exists on all these different levels. And of course, we kind of know this is, we know that us and everything else, of course, exists on many different levels. There's some we exist as a human being, don't we? To some extent, but actually, as is often pointed out these days, I don't know how they work this out, but over half of the cells in our body are actually cells. That's quite the right way of putting it, but non-human, at least non-human in origin. Plus that our own bodies, of course, are home for a multitude of other organisms. And of course, we also know we exist on a subatomic level. So we exist in all these different levels. So even our physical, what we take as a physical human being is just a partial, not untrue. Of course, there's some meaning in thinking of ourselves as human beings, but very much a partial view, just part of it. And all things have a kind of energetic being, don't they? They have an energetic being as well as a material being, a non-material being. Why am I saying this? I've lost the thread. So just as we're not actually physically anywhere near as discrete as we tend to imagine, we see ourselves as kind of discrete entities, don't we? That have a kind of wholeness to them. But actually, we're made up of lots of different types of entities that all have a kind of separate existence in a way. And just as we're not physically, even materially discrete, really, I don't think we're psychically discrete either. We are participating in psyche just as we participate in the physical world. So perhaps these an archetype becomes an archetype because it's a sort of patterning that exists, at least in potential, in psyche itself, not in individual psyche, but kind of in psyche as a field. I don't know what any of that means, but I think it's quite interesting to allow yourself the possibility of connecting with something which is partly to do with you and partly not entirely to do with you, perhaps, as an archetype. Green Tar as an archetype is, of course, these archetypes in particular traditions take on specific manifestation, but they generally cross-cultural to some extent. So the green man, the green woman is probably a fairly universal kind of image that exists in one form or other in most cultures. This sort of being that personifies life, the kind of energetics of life. Green as a color. I touched on this yesterday, didn't I? Saying I felt that color itself is archetypal. And green as an archetype, particularly is very often associated with life, isn't it? A life force, the force that through the green fuse drives the flower, sort of thing. And certainly in lots of cultures, it has a certain sort of property to it, doesn't it? So when we use mantra as a form of meditation, in a way, we're trying to allow a certain psychic constellation to take place around that particular archetype. You know? I think one of the things with Green Tower, what we're trying to strengthen is our kind of connection with life itself, the sort of life force, you know, the force that also moves through us is the same force that moves through the rest of nature. Anyway, don't worry about it. I mean, I'm not asking you to. I'm not asking you to do anything. Okay. Anyway, we'll move. We'll move on. So anyway, we'll be chanting the Green Tower mantra as we did yesterday, and as we in call and response. And as I was saying yesterday, part of this whole call and response thing is just try and open up to the kind of receptive, the listening with mantra, the way the kind of listening aspect, you know, listening, sort of allowing yourself. Maybe this is what I'm trying to get at. I feel very strongly these days that the world often feels quite kind of, I think the way the world comes to us these days in many ways, it seems quite harsh, or quite dangerous, or quite difficult. And of course, it does have this aspect, you know, it does have this aspect, but it has another side which is actually far more prevalent. It's that the world supports us, doesn't it? The world supports us. From the moment we're born, the world supports us. You know? And I think sometimes we kind of don't quite allow the world to really support us. You know? And I think one of the things we're trying to do with meditation is kind of open up to this potential of being held, if you like, or supported, or even cherished by the world, you know. It's just a way of speaking, isn't it? But it's a sort of, there's something quite fundamental here that if we experience the world primarily as in somehow as in opposition to us, it's a very difficult way to live a life, isn't it? Or if we sort of open up to all the different ways in which the world supplies everything we need for life, really, doesn't it? From air, light, sun, you know, food, you know, and the list is literally endless, isn't it? Quite literally, really. Everything around us, our houses, our clothes, everything comes from the world, doesn't it? In one way or the other, it's provided by the planet that we live on, the world in which we live. So when we lose this idea of things having any psyche, of course, it all kind of gets reduced to a kind of dead matter. It doesn't matter anymore. You know. The way we've treated the world tends towards things not mattering, don't they? Matter becomes desold or without any sort of intrinsic value, and our relationship with it gets broken, and it knows, and we can no longer be fully nourished by it, like the hungry ghost, isn't it? They take in this, the world all around us is beautiful. I mean, you know, I don't want to. I don't want to minimize the difficulties of life, but I also want to emphasize the what I don't know, you know, what a wonderful thing it is to be alive, isn't it? What a sort of miraculous thing it is to possess awareness and life, and yeah, it's unsatisfactory, relatively short, but it's also an incredible thing, and just to lose that basic appreciation of being alive, if we lose that, it becomes very difficult. I think very difficult, and I think one of the things we're trying to do through practice is to reawaken or strengthen, encourage that kind of response to life, where we do just allow ourselves to be nourished and held by life itself. Anyway, I'm saying this, I sort of see Green Tara in this sort of way, really. You know. Anyway, enough of that. So get yourselves comfortable. I'll get myself comfortable. Try and keep the posture. I mean, I don't mean don't lock the posture. You know, there might be a little bit more movement. I know when I chant, there's a bit more movement in the body. The body seems to naturally want to move a little bit. That's fine, but try and keep the alignment. So today, Bodhidharma is going to respond, and you will chant along with her. And as I say, we just when we finish the chant, we just sit with whatever's there. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue Swaha.
Om Tare Tare Swaha.
Om Tare Swaha.
Om Tare Tare Swaha.
Om 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 Tare tu 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 Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Tue 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 Swaha.
Om Tare Tare Swaha.
Om Tare Tare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Ture Swaha.
Okie dokie. Well, look, we've got a little bit of time if there's anything anybody wants to ask or say. If you don't want to speak, you can always put it in a text and ask or relay it to me. Yeah, so we'll see what happens, eh?
Yeah, if you want to use your reaction button to put your hand up, then I'll see and I'll spotlight you. If you'd rather not, please just put your text in the chat, and Ms. Parmanda says I'll pick it up. So we have a question from Sue Shepherd. Parmanda.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Paramount. It's Sue here from Cardiff. I was just wanting to know about the one breath thing, because obviously it's dependent on lung capacity, whether you can do the one breath. I can see the benefit of it because it's like a smooth in, smooth out. But is that a traditional teaching?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's traditional in the sense that I think that's how they would have. I don't know. Is the answer. I don't know if it's a traditional teaching. I don't know. It's certainly in quite a lot of religious traditions. In that they chant things of quite just about 5 seconds length, yeah, and call and response, yeah. So they were regulating their breath through it. Whether it's ever been sort of codified, I'm sorry, so I don't know really.
Yeah,
it's very. Might be something I just made up.
No, I can see it's very helpful, but I think I'm going to have to just extend my lung capacity a little bit more just to get it right. But I think with training, I think it would be quite sort of,
There's been quite a lot of modern research that sort of, I mean, I don't know how they say this, but they say the sort of ideal breath is around about 5 seconds inhalation and exhalation. And then they realized that actually that corresponded with a lot of traditional, not just in the Buddhist tradition, but in the Christian tradition as well, a lot of things that they do actually imposes that breath on you, you know. So whether it's a coincidence or whether, I don't know, whether, I mean, I wouldn't worry, you know, I wouldn't, you know, worry too much. You know. But yes, if you can get, I think that, I think the exhalation, I think extending the exhalation for most people is probably quite a good idea when we meditate, you know. So we're trying to sort of even them out a little bit. Although usually I'd say to people just breathe naturally, but maybe just, you know, if the exhalation seems a lot shorter in the in-breath than the in-breath, it might be worth just extending it a little bit. Yeah, it should be about, I think it should, you know, it seems helpful physiologically if they're sort of about the same length. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you. Helpful.
I'm trying to remember. There was a good book that came out. I don't know if it came out last year or the year before, called Breath, which was you know, it's quite an interesting book. In fact, I'll find out. Well, I'll find out and put it on the website who it was by. And this guy done a lot of research into breathing and he talks a little bit about this. Well, he talks a lot about that, among other things. But it's quite an interesting book.
Thank you.
In the
That's
chat, sorry, Sue. Paramount, in the chat, somebody says Breath by James Nestor. Is that the book you think of?
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah, James Nestor.
Great. Jenny, maybe you could add a link to it, to the Padlet, if you can, or I can do that later. There's a couple of questions in the chat, Paramanda. The first is from Jaya Shraddha, which says, this morning you spoke about participatory attention, which piqued my interest. Could you please expand on what it is and how also to practice it?
I think I'm not sure. I don't know what the context was. I say, and I mean, what I'm trying to get at, I think, by using this word participator, is that our awareness is always in relation to something, you know. It's relational, you know, whether it's in relation to our own sort of bodies, inner sensations, outer sensations, or the outer world. And another way of sort of thinking about that is what we're doing is, by bringing attention to things, is participating in the world. So I think it's a way of speaking where I'm trying to slightly shift our idea that our practice is somehow entirely ours, if that makes sense. Well, isn't very clear with it, but you know, we sometimes talk about mindfulness as if it's kind of, how can I put it? I think we're called to attention by the world, aren't we? Or this is one way of seeing it, you know. I think sometimes our take on sort of mindfulness is quite instrumental. It's all about us improving our well-being, or you know, being more effective or efficient in the world, or being calmer. But I wonder if there's this different way of looking at it, that we're called by the world to take notice of it, you know, and when we, you know, and it's a reciprocal activity, you know. So when we even, this might sound a bit silly, I don't know, but when we sit in a room, for instance, that room is providing us with something, isn't it? Space and shelter and warmth, or whatever it is, comfort, whatever it is. We're actively involved in the room, you know. And I think I'm using this sort of idea that we participate, and I mean, I was saying today, wasn't I, that I think in a way, although I can't really explain it, you know, although I don't think I'm the only person talking about this these days. That consciousness is something we participate in. That consciousness, a bit like space or time, is a field in which we are participating in, you know. So again, it's not quite just us, it's not our consciousness, or it's not our mindfulness, it's more like we're entering into something that's already there. And it's kind of not demanded of us, but offered to us by the world, you know. I don't know if that makes any sort of sense, really. Um, I quite like this idea that we're entering something that already exists in a way. It's a bit like the whole of Buddhism, and it talks about reality as if, or seeing things as they really are. So this is a sort of participation in how the world really is, not just seeing something. I don't like that term really, because it puts a distance between us and the thing, doesn't it? But we're participating in reality, aren't we? We're part of reality. We're participating in the planet just by breathing, let alone all the other things we do. We're an active participant. But the action is both ways. It's acting on us and we're acting on it. Well, there isn't an us and an it really, is there? It's just the world, The world, another way, we turn it around and we can say, well, the world manifests us, I don't know, I think it's quite useful to just sort of play with these things in your imagination. What is your actual relationship with the world? How do you experience the world? How does the world experience you? What's that relationship? I don't know if that's what I mean. I'll probably say the same thing in a slightly different way. On Tuesday.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes left in this session, Paramanda, just to give you a time check. There's 2 questions outstanding. Have you got time for 2?
Are they outstanding questions?
They are absolutely outstanding questions.
Okay.
I hope you're in an outstanding mood.
Oh,
the first one is, please, can you tell me about the 6 Buddhist chakras?
Oh, well, they're the same as all the others. The traditional way to find Hinduism. It's just that sometimes in Buddhism they fuse the 2 lower chakras into one, so they lose one. So they go from 7 to 6. So the root chakra and the sexual chakra becomes one chakra in some Buddhist traditions. I don't know if that's always the case. Maybe because the monk, well, I don't know. I think so, maybe because they're celibate, that wouldn't make any difference. I don't know, but you do get that in some. If you look at Buddhist art, where you'd get, in the Hindu tradition, you usually got 7 lotuses, 77. They vary. I mean, I wouldn't take any of. I mean, I'm not an expert on all this sort of thing. I would, and partly I don't really take any of these systems literally. I mean, you look at sort of Taoist energetics, which Taoism has got a very sophisticated idea about body energetics, but it's got quite a different kind of system. It's just that this 7, I was interested in the 7 because 7 disappears a lot. There's something about 7, That's what I was talking about, wasn't I, this morning? But I don't. Yeah. They just fuse. They just fuse one with the 2 lower ones.
Great. Jai Shraddha says thank you as well for your last answer. Final question we have is from Karuna Shri, who says, I wanted to ask about, I wanted to ask about green Tara. I have a connection with white Tara and with Amitabha, especially these days with his mantra. I can feel a connection with the earth while listening to other people chanting Tara's mantra. I can't though evoke a sense of the figure Tara. Could you say a bit more about the power of Tara's mantra, what we are doing through chanting?
I've lost the very first part of that question.
So Karuna Shri was just talking about her connection to green Tara and Amitabha, and she feels a connection with the earth while listening to other people chanting the mantra, but can't evoke a sense of the figure Tara. So I was asking for a bit more about the power of Tara's mantra and what were we doing through chanting.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I'll probably have to have a conversation about this, because I don't know if I mean, it's a feeling, isn't it? I mean, some people, evidently most people are. There was a program on the radio not long ago about, because I can't really visualize anything, you know, that's sort of vaguely maybe. Where some people, of course, are very adept. Most people evidently can have quite strong internal visualizations. I mean, I'm not one of those people, but I do have I can and do have quite a strong feeling for some of these figures, including the Green Tara, but I think it's a very kind of personal thing how you make this connection with these figures. When I was on my ordination retreat, I remember Sangha Epstein saying that, oh, don't worry about what attracts you to a figure. It's enough that you're attracted to it, you know. And I mean, I think I think our relationships with these figures, you know, develop over time, and we shouldn't worry too much how or why it arises. You know, I mean, just if the mantra, listening to the mantra has an effect, well, that's the connection, isn't it? You know, that's a beginning, at least, of a connection. You know, it's taken me, I mean, I think with, particularly with Green Tara, which is it's actually a part of the sadhana tradition, although I don't think they're given in that way now, but when I took up, I didn't take Green Tara when I was ordained, but I did take it up probably 15 years afterwards, or maybe, I don't know. And I lived in the States, so I took it as an additional sadhana, and it was a self-visualization. And so you imagine yourself a Tara, so which I found really quite useful, because as I say, it doesn't mean you don't have to construct a visual image of it, therefore, you know, because it becomes a more or less completely somatic image. You're imagining yourself as Tara. So, which was very interesting for me as a man, doing that. I found it very interesting to do that. And I mean, so if you're a woman, I mean, there's a lot of Tara already there, isn't there? You know, I mean, I don't want to be too gendered here, but because, as I say, I find it very interesting and useful to imagine that part. So, but maybe what it means, or how I relate to it, because it's not the shadow side in any negative sense of the word, but just it's the hidden side of me, isn't it, as a man, the female side of this feminine figure, you know. So it might be quite different if I was a woman, you know, then, you know, maybe self-visualizing as a man would be quite interesting. I don't know. What am I saying? I don't know. I think, you know, these. I don't know what this. I don't know what this whole thing. I'll talk more about this another time. It's a little big subject, isn't it? What are we doing with it? We've got. I don't know what we're doing with this whole. You know, I must say, I'm not necessarily the person to ask about sadhana in a way. I think I've got quite particular, maybe. unorthodox relationship partner. No, that wasn't right. It was outstanding question, but not an but not an outstanding answer. Okay, moving on. We'll have the last one.
Should we do a poll on how outstanding your answer was, Parminder?
No.
Add a poll to the Padlet.
But I have another question. Go.
I think we're out of time now. Actually, it's nearly 5 o'clock local time.
Oh, okay. Well, love to you all. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. Tomorrow is a important day. It's the third day, so it's you tend to get a bit of resistance on the third day. That's a good sign. Okay. If you feel a bit kind of resistant tomorrow, that's a good sign. Okay. It means something's going on. Yeah, we want something to be going on. I'm just saying that, so don't be too surprised if you feel a bit resistant to practicing on the third day. Okie dokie, lots of love, and see you soon.